Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen King podcast. As usual, I'm here with my co-host, Lou. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
We are back, and today we're going to talk about something that we haven't talked about during our long careers as podcasters. Or maybe in another kind of subject, but not for Stephen King. And we are going to talk about soundtracks.
Yes.
And the importance of it. And we have a guest, Bryant Burnette, that will join us.
That's right.
Who is somewhat of an expert in the field, I would say.
Right.
And when it comes to you and me, Lou, I guess you are the expert and I am the the learner this time. And it will be interesting to talk about all the music and what it does for the movies.
Absolutely. When he also bought the recent CD collection, and we'll go through that set as well.
Yep.
And hopefully we hit all the right notes.
Yes. But first...
There, I said it.
Yeah. But first, let's kick off with the news.
Welcome, welcome. Do not fear the door that lies before you. We will protect you. We are your guides, Hans and Lou, and we will give you the latest in Stephen King news. But before we do so, you must prove yourself worthy. You must open the door and join us in the death room.
Alrighty. First item. The second It movie will start filming this summer in Toronto, and we still have at this time no casting news. There has been some buzz about Jessica Chastain, who worked with the director on his previous movie, horror movie called Mama. But beyond that, I haven't really heard any other casting announcements. I don't know if you've heard anything recently, Hans, or...
No, nothing. And there's some speculations about who's going to play Bev, but I don't pay much attention to them really, because I mean it's the fans who are interested in her. We haven't heard anything official yet, and I can't say I really know her work either. So, I mean, other than she's actually a redhead, I don't know what her qualification is.
Oh, she's a very good actress. She was in Zero Dark 30, which won the Oscar for the Best Picture a couple of years ago. Her most recent movie is Molly Game with Idris Elba. It's a poker movie game, so It's worth checking out.
Yeah.
And she's definitely... I think it's what I've heard about casting the adult Beverly is between her and Amy Adams. And I think I'd actually prefer Amy Adams, though Jessica Chastain is definitely a very good actor as well. So either way, it would be a win-win if they got one of those two. Yeah. And it'll be very interesting to see who they're going to cast for the adults, and equally interesting if they're going to have cameos by the kids from the first movie as well.
Yeah. I'm going to say that, as I say every time we talk about casting, I want good actors or actresses that's unknown to me. Because if you have seen them in too much other stuff, we'll relate to that. I mean, say that they would cast Bruce Willis as Ben Hanscom. It would be hard to see past all the Die Hard films and stuff like that. So personally, I prefer unknown but good actors or actors.
So do you know Amy Adams?
Not by the name. I might have seen her if I see a photo of her, but
she was in Arrival, and she plays Lois Lane in the most recent Superman movies.
I might recognize her when I see her, but it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, well, it sounds like either way you're happy with both these choices.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, and moving on, and this is both interesting and scary. Dark Tower TV show might be heading to Amazon, and it's a little bit surprising because this was actually just a short sentence in another article about Amazon and their TV series that they are doing. And it's just mentioned as part of their effort, Amazon made a deal for a Lord of the Rings TV series and is developing a slew of high-profile titles, including The Dark Tower, Wheel of Time, Ringworld, Lazarus, and Snow Crash. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit surprising that they isn't doing a bigger announcement of it, but at the same time, I think it's good because hopefully they are trying to make something work before they announce it, and hopefully they have a plan and rebooting the whole thing. But it will be interesting to see. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with Amazon as a TV show provider. It's not available here in Sweden, so, or I guess maybe you could get a UK account or and see it here anyway. So I don't know about that angle of it. I don't know if you're familiar with the techniques of Amazon TV.
Yeah, well, Amazon Video is a video service you get if you subscribe to their Amazon Prime service, which gives you several things, mostly around shipping, gives you priority shipping, and also occasionally, or quite often, I should say, they give you early notifications on deals and things like that, or preferential treatment or preferred customer treatment to have the first shot at certain items that they put up. And then a part of that service is Amazon Prime, and they want to compete with Netflix because Netflix is really capturing the streaming market, and Amazon wants to be in that space as well. So I don't know if Amazon Prime is something that's available in all countries. That's something you might want to check out, Hans.
Yeah.
And I think it's like $70 Canadian a month or a year, I should say, not a month, a year.
Okay.
And I find it worth it. If you do a lot of online shopping, you get free shipping and things like that. And in North America, they guarantee 2-day shipping, though I've heard from people on the internet that doesn't always happen. So, but yeah, this article, it's like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
And there's some heavy hitting titles in there too. Besides The Dark Tower, you've got The Wheel of Time, which is like a 10-book series. Ringworld is a very famous science fiction book. Lazarus, I'm not that familiar with Lazarus, but Snow Crash is also a pretty famous science fiction book. And it's weird that they all get lumped into that one throwaway sentence in a mention of a project. Ian M. Banks, a writer who's something Phlebas, I think it's called, Enter Phlebas, or I'm sorry, I don't have the article in front of me, but I've never heard of that series. So it's weird. And maybe that's just it might be a blind spot in my knowledge of this writer, but I don't know anything about that series, and compared to all the other ones that are listed in that sentence, I know more about those than I do about that one. So it's it's a very, very strange throwaway line that I didn't pick up on until I read the article a little more carefully. And I go, what? Dark Tower TV series? Really? So this, of course, opens up some very interesting questions. The first of which is, we know that Glenn Mazzara is attached to the Dark Tower TV series, but that one was positioned to do book 4, Wizard and Glass. So now, is that still the plan, or are they going to do a reboot? Are we going to keep any of the cast from the movie? So there's a lot of questions here, and just because the Amazon's made a deal, I think when I sent or posted about this, I put question marks after it, because that's not a guarantee that they're actually going to produce a TV series. It just means that it's in development. So, So, don't people are getting really excited about this, but we've heard nothing official from Amazon, nothing official from Stephen King. So this is very early days, and this could take a couple of years to go from this announcement to actually being available on their streaming service, especially when I think they're pretty committed to the Lord of the Rings TV series. They've targeting like $150 million for that series. So and I mean, if you Google it online, I think every article that mention it refers to this sentence in this article. So even though it pops up on a lot of places, it all has the same origin. So we actually don't know anything else. All the other stuff are just speculations and stuff like that. Right. The article source is from Variety, so that is a reliable source.
Yeah, definitely.
But everything beyond that is speculation. And it's funny, I don't know, like for you, Hans, because I have agents set up on my Google to look for Stephen King news articles. Yeah. And I'm seeing every day more and more sites are reporting Dark Tower TV series coming to Amazon.
Yeah.
But it's I don't think they're checking it enough, but it's one of these things that's taken on momentum on its own. And you get the feeling that they all believe that this is, or they're making you believe that this is a done deal, which it's not.
Yeah.
This is very, very early days, and there's no guarantee that this is actually ever going to come onto Amazon. Please treat this with a grain of salt. We might not see something for 3 or 4 years, but it is exciting. I'm glad to see that that they're still looking at doing some sort of adaptation of the Dark Tower. And they tried a movie version, and that obviously didn't work out as everybody hoped. So maybe a TV version is the way to go.
Yeah, and I actually think that it would be good to wait a couple of years until they do this, because today when you mention the Dark Tower, everybody's thinking about the movie that really crashed and burned. So I think that from promotion perspective and everything like that, I think it would be easier to restart. And I'm hoping that it won't air it until at least 2 years in the future. They could start it and work on it, but I hope they give it some time before they release it. I think that would work much better.
And what would your preference be, to start over with the first book or continue with the current plan of doing Wizard and Glass first?
I don't really know. I think it might be wise to start from the beginning with the Wizard and Glass chronologically, story-wise, and tell the story from their being young and going all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it could work as well if they start with book 1 and give flashbacks. I think that could work either way, actually. But I think they need to do a total reboot, new actors and everything. I don't think they should associate this with the movie at all, because the movie is like an open sword to a lot of people. So I think that starting all over again and just ignoring the movie is the right way to do it either way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if it came out at the earliest 2 years from now, that would be better, to put some more distance between this and the movie. And I think that you have to recast it to totally tell the audience that this is totally unrelated to the movie. So,
yeah,
which is too bad, because I still really like the cast, though, except for Tom Taylor. He'd be too old. I think he's out of the picture no matter what happens.
Yeah, and I think to be even more disconnected to the movie, it might be good to start with Wizard and Glass, and when Roland is really young, and then moving on from there, just to not being in the same place story-wise as the movie as well, right. I think.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So we'll see. It's but it's good.
Yep.
I mean, those other projects are so high profile too that I don't know how much money Amazon's going to spend on a yearly basis as well too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it might be that they have bought the rights to everything that they say here, and then they will do one, and if that's a success, they will use the money that one brings in to do the next. And so if the first one crash and burns, well, maybe that's it.
But this is an interesting trend, because if you're a fan of multiple franchises, you could be potentially ending up having to subscribe to like 5 or 6 services to see the stuff that you want to watch. We're seeing this with Netflix. We're seeing this with Star Trek on CBS. I mean, if you're outside of the States, you can watch it on Netflix. But within the States, you have to get a CBS streaming access to the service to get access to that. So I'm a little leery of all these streaming services, and there's going to be a struggle between them for a while until it goes back to 1 or 2 big ones. And Disney also is coming up with their own, and they're going to put all their Marvel and Star Wars stuff there, and Pixar. So yeah, it's going to be interesting how this is all going to shake out and going down the road.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on.
So this is like, we've heard some strange jumping off points from Stephen King material for creating movies or TV series, but if you're hot, you're really hot, because I don't think I've ever heard of a poem from a writer being turned into a TV series. Like, what potential connective tissue can this TV series have to this Bone Church poem, which King wrote in the 60s, and it came out in his anthology Bizarre Bad Dreams. So it has to do. I remember this. This was a pretty grim right up your alley kind of story, or Hans, right? These people going deep into the jungle and trying to locate this mythic bone church.
Yeah, I must admit that I really don't have this fresh in my mind. But as you say, a poem being basis for a TV show, I am 98% certain that they are using this just to be able to use King's name. I think it will have, it will probably have the poem embedded in the story in some way. But they could just as easily have done this show, whatever it will be now, without having the poem as a basis. So I definitely feel that this is a way to be able to use Stephen King's name. I don't know. It doesn't mean that it won't be a good TV show. It could be, but it feels a little stretched, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's actually it's a fairly long poem too. Like if you pull out your Bizarre Bad Dreams book, you can look at it again, and it's a good horror story. It's a Lovecraftian vibe to it. They're on this jungle expedition to find this bone church, and out of 32 people that start out, only 3 survive. So it's right up there with like a good zombie movie or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. But really, it's this could not be a multi-season project. I would see this as a limited 1-season kind of affair. But man, when you're hot, you're hot.
Yeah, maybe they start out with 32 travelers, and then in season 2, another 32 travelers is going to find the first 32 travelers, and maybe they can go on and go on. Yeah, and moving on, Castle Rock, the TV show, is supposed to air this summer, I think. And we have a new casting, and it's actually Chosen Jacobs who plays the young, what's his name?
Mike.
Mike, thank you. In the new It movie, he will be playing Andrew Holland's character's son in this Castle Rock TV show. I think he did a good job in It, so it's good casting. We don't know much about his part, how big it is. Sounds like he's coming in fairly late in the game because most of the things has to be more or less done now, it feels like, if they're going to be able to air it this summer. So, but it will be interesting, and I think it's a good casting.
As you said, it's a late announcement, so I have to feel that he's only going to be in an episode or 2, probably. And I have to admit, when I first heard the announcement, I thought they were casting him to maybe play Andre Holland's character as a younger character in the story as some sort of a flashback. So, but apparently not. He's going to play the son of Henry Deaver, and we still don't know a lot about that series, but there's a lot of King alumni in it, so that's going to be fun for all the fans who've enjoyed the various movies or adaptations of previous King works over the years. Yeah,
this will be King connected in 2 ways, both story-wise and actor and actresses from earlier adaptations. So it will be fun. I just hope that all these connections won't steal the focus from the plot itself.
Oh, I don't think so. I think you'll get over that pretty quickly.
And end up, I think so. So, yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay, one more story. How did this get on here?
Yeah, what happened? Yeah, my book Shining in the Dark is now being announced for a 7th edition.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now, before the year is over, it's already out in Bulgarian. The US edition is about to be sent out, but there will also be an Italian, a Czech, a German, a UK, and a Swedish edition before the year is over. So that's very exciting.
I bet. I don't see a Canadian edition. I'm hurt.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get that done. Maybe one in France. You speak France there, right?
Yeah, we have French in one province, but I don't speak it. So. And I see some of your book covers are different than other ones. Yeah,
there are actually 5 of the covers are the US or versions of the US cover.
Right.
And the UK edition it's actually a totally new cover and also totally new interior art in it as well. So that one is totally different from the others. And the cover for the Swedish one hasn't actually been announced yet.
Okay.
So that little secret. Hopefully we'll be able to. It's going to be done as a Kickstarter, this edition.
Oh, okay.
That will take place. The Kickstarter will take place in April.
Okay.
So it's about to kick off in a month. And the book will be out in September. And for those who doesn't know, is that a Kickstarter is that we set a goal, a sum of money, that if you pre-order the book and we get the amount we're asking for, we'll do the book. If not, everybody gets their money back, so no one will be losing money. But what you can do also is that if you reach a goal, you can set a second goal that if we get this kind of money, we're going to do this extra or this extra and that extra. We're going to add and add and add depending on how much money.
Yep.
So hopefully there will be a brand new spanking cover for it.
Sweet.
Yep. So that's why no cover has been revealed yet.
Okay, so I'm curious about the one book that has a different cover and artwork for it. Which edition is that?
That's the UK edition.
UK. Was that something that they decided to do, or did they approach you with that, or how did that come about?
Well, when a publisher buys the book, they buy the stories.
Oh, okay.
That's a minimum.
Right.
And if they want to, they can buy the cover and they can buy the interior designs or illustrations if they want to.
Okay.
In this case, they wanted to do, this is a limited edition. It's limited to 350 copies.
Mm-hmm.
And to make it little special, they wanted to do a different cover and different illustrations. So,
okay.
And they are done by Francis Villancourt.
Okay. I was going to ask you if it was the same artist as the other cover, but...
No, and that's actually a Canadian.
Oh, all right. There's our Canadian connection.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess I'll have to get that version.
Yep. So that's the one that's standing out from the others,
right?
Illustration-wise. So yeah, it's fun. I collect Stephen King books in every language I can get. So
right.
I'm really enjoying these different editions with different language and everything. And what would be really fun is to get an Arabic edition.
All right.
Because they read from right to left instead of left to right.
Right.
So that would be a different edition, and I love versions and difference and stuff like that. So
cool. Very cool.
We'll see. I hope I will have a couple of other editions to announce.
I was just going to ask you that. So you're still on track to get more out there.
There are still other editions being considered, and we don't know exactly if they will happen or not, but they could. So
right.
Hopefully.
Okay, well, good luck and congratulations on everything that's happening with the book for you so far.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so that's the news.
That's news, yes.
This is great. What's our job? We'd like drive around, pick up stiffs or what?
It's time for reviews from the night shift.
Hello, everyone. This is an interesting segment that we have a special guest with us today, and that is Bryant Burnette, constant commenter over at Hans' site. Welcome aboard, Bryant.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah, we've been trying to get you on here for quite a while, so we're glad that we finally were able to hook up together.
I'll do my best to not bring shame to my clan.
Very good. You want to introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us your Stephen King background and also mention your blog that you write pretty intensive articles about Stephen King.
Yeah, sure. I'm just a fan. It's nothing special about me in that regard. Been a fan since 1990 or so most of my life. And at some point it occurred to me that there was a mechanism for me to write about that and make people read it. So I do that online. The name of the blog is The Truth Inside the Lie, which sounds like a conspiracy theorist website. But if you've read it, I guess maybe you know what I'm talking about there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, check that out if you feel a need. It's a bunch of nonsense, really, but I love it.
Yeah, I've been there quite a few times, and it's really interesting to read your very in-depth articles quite a bit. So I do enjoy going there.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to talk about a topic that we really have never broached before on the podcast, especially in regards to Stephen King works. And this is specifically about adaptations of his works, movie or TV, where music obviously becomes an important part of the mix when creating the final product for us to see. So, Bryant, are you a heavy-duty soundtrack collector?
I used to be really heavy duty, something that I got into when I was in college, and I would buy literally any soundtrack that came out. But at some point I realized that was insane and stopped. But I'm still a huge John Williams fan.
Right.
And I can only hope that everybody hearing my voice knows who John Williams is.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you know who John Williams is. You may just not know that you know who John Williams is.
Yeah.
And
you might have seen the little movies like Star Wars or Superman, the original Superman movies, or
Yeah.
Jaws, or Jurassic Park.
Yeah, he's the standard that everybody else tries to emulate, I think, and nobody is successful.
Exactly.
But he's by no means the entirety of the film composing industry or anything. There are any number of other people that are well worth checking out. But at this point, I had to say that no, I'm not really an expert in terms of film music. I stopped following it as its own thing probably 20 years ago and just pick up things that especially enjoy. Lord of the Rings, stuff like that. Of course, since I'm an insane lunatic when it comes to Stephen King, I pick up any Stephen King soundtracks that come out, and there's a pretty good many of those.
Yes, absolutely. I just have to say that a casual soundtrack listener, in that if I really enjoy the soundtrack, I will pick it up. You mentioned Lord of the Rings, which is a really good example for me because I just think Howard Shore just did an amazing job with those movies. And I ended up getting the extended edition box sets of all three movies.
Mhm.
So just a fantastic collection. Of course, John Williams, his Superman score and his Star Wars scores, E.T., Close Encounters, you can go on and on. There's other composers, but he's basically the Mozart of movie soundtracks as far as that goes. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to set up a thought experiment or something for people to try. Maybe you've done this already, but if you pick a trailer or something for any movie and watch it without the sound and then listen to it with the sound, and trailers especially, movie is probably pumped up more than when you actually go to see the film in the theater. But if you play something like the scene from Shawshank Redemption when they have the first panning shot over the prison, just play that without any sound, and it looks pretty depressing. But then when you couple that with the music that plays during that helicopter flyby shot, it's just amazing. And then, of course, when Andy breaks out of the jail, out of the prison, and falls into water and basically gets reborn, you can really tell how the music adds to it, and especially like the Mozart scene in the prison yard as well. So,
Yeah.
there's a lot of great examples of that. And Hans, that's something that you can try to see if it affects you differently.
Yeah, and I'm listening to your enthusiastic talk about movie soundtrack, and I have to admit that I like the soundtrack, but I don't notice it, if that makes any sense, because I think it definitely brings out the movie and makes the movie what it is. But I think that if it's done right, I don't notice it until it's gone. I watched some horror movie here a couple of weeks ago. I can't even remember what it was, but they had no soundtrack in the movie at all during the entire movie. And that made me react and thinking, oh, there's no sound. So I am missing it when it's not there, but I can't say that I appreciate it as it should be appreciated.
Right.
Well, I think that's the vast majority of moviegoers.
Yeah.
I think you're by far in the majority there. So that makes for an interesting mix of looks at this, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to add, Hans, that you brought up a very good point about, especially horror movies. The absence of music can be just as powerful as music that you get, say, like during a jump scare or something like that, where they really, all of a sudden it just comes crashing in. But sometimes the silences are just as important as the use of a soundtrack. And that's a skill that creative people, directors and whatnot, editors have when they're assembling a piece as well. So that's a very good point, and I think horror is a bit different in that regard. So I think that's a good segue point into our discussion of Stephen King associated music, particularly. So Bryant, you have the Stephen King collection that was released by Varese Sarabande. I hope I said that right. And they're a well-known soundtrack company. So why don't you give us a lowdown on this? Is it an 8-disc set, I believe?
It is. It's 8 discs. It'll set you back about $90, which is actually not a bad price for 8 discs. The question is whether there's anything on those 8 discs that you're going to enjoy.
Right.
And I think the answer to that is going to vary in terms of the degree to which you're interested in the music.
Right.
Unfortunately, I feel like it's a set that really only applies to guys like me who want to hear that music kind of regardless of whether they even like it or not.
Right.
You might get a little bit out of maybe half of it. Hans, you might not get anything out of it at all.
And probably not.
And unfortunately, I think that's how most people react to it. But personally, I still feel like it's an important thing, if only for me. And as I was thinking about what I was going to say while talking to you guys, looking at the titles that they have in this collection, it brings up some interesting stuff that a lot of people probably just don't ever think about regarding soundtrack releases. So I thought maybe we could try to get into a little bit of that. And if I start boring, you just, hang up on me.
Yep.
Yep.
No worries. So we're talking about 4 films here specifically too, right?
Yeah, and I'll start with disc 1 and we'll just go from there.
Okay.
The first movie that they cover is Dreamcatcher, everyone's favorite Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
So they devote 2 discs of runtime to that score. And immediately, one of the things that I want to talk about with that is that this isn't the first soundtrack for Dreamcatcher that has ever existed. When the movie came out in, let's say, 2003, I think, a soundtrack came out at that time, and it runs 39 minutes. By the time you add up the 2 discs that are in this soundtrack collection, you've got 96 minutes. So right there, what you're talking about is when a soundtrack comes out, it's almost never going to have all of the music that whoever composed the score wrote for the movie. So you're getting a very incomplete picture of the work that they did, unless somebody takes the time and effort to put out one of these complete releases, which is what is on this new soundtrack collection. And I'm guessing most people don't really know that. I'm guessing a lot of people, if they were to look at a soundtrack, just sort of assume that, oh, well, that's all the music, because why would it not be?
Right.
Well, Lou, you're a good person to ask that. What did that ever cross your mind?
Absolutely. I mean, the first time you look at a soundtrack and you add up the tracks and it goes, this is like 38 minutes and the movie was 2.5 hours long. There's gotta be something missing here. So then if you watch the movie, you're going, oh, that's not on the CD or that's not. I mean, I had the Shawshank Redemption CD soundtrack and that's not too bad, but it's still not everything. But it's soundtracks like those single disc release just tend to be greatest hits collection as opposed to the entire work. And you really notice that if you buy the Lord of the Ring extended soundtracks, because those movies are 3 hours long, and there's just an amazing amount of movie that's not there, music that's not there.
But I have to ask, isn't there a difference when we talk about the music in a movie? Isn't there like soundtracks that's like a composed piece, and maybe there are like just sounds? And I don't mean sound of people walking and stuff like that, but is everything in a movie composed soundtrack? Do you know what I'm getting after? I mean, couldn't there just be
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, those small, short, just notes and tones here and there, is that really something to put on a CD? I don't know. I'm just asking what you think thinking about it.
For completists,
I would,
yes.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess there could be
I would say it's a case-by-case thing,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you count like have a movie that's 2 hours long and you have soundtrack that's 39 minutes, maybe that's I'm calling it the music just to make a difference between it. And maybe there are more, but that are more like sounds, like short things. I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, well, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. I can actually give you a pretty good example of that. John Carpenter, he does a lot of those really, really short things, and they function in his movies more often than not like sound effects, but they're technically music.
Yep.
So a good example of that would be in Big Trouble in Little China. There'll be just random sounds / music, however you want to quantify it, that he throws in when somebody kicks somebody in the face. It may last for half a second. So it is music, but you're also right in that it really is more like sound effects, and it's kind of cool to be able to hear that, I guess, but not needed really.
Yeah.
Most composers don't do so much of that stuff. Most composers will turn that sort of thing over to the sound effects people, but not always. It's really variable by movie.
Yeah, I mean, you could think of like the Psycho strike. Like it's just a couple of notes, right? But that's something
Right,
that
yeah.
you would definitely want on the CD because it's so iconic. And another clarification we should make here too when we're discussing these CDs is this is all original music composed specifically for the movie. We're not talking about soundtracks where they're taking like the top hits of the time period or even or hits from older time periods.
Stand by Me, for example.
Stand by Me. That's. I mean, it's nice to have it on the soundtrack, definitely, but that's not original music. That's something that was created by somebody else, and they're just buying the rights to use it in their movie. So we're talking about stuff that's specifically composed for a movie, and I think that's what all these CDs are, right, Bryant? There's no covers or anything like that?
Exactly. There are no songs on there. So, for example, there are 2 discs devoted to the miniseries version of The Stand. Nowhere on there will you find Baby Can You Dig Your Man,
Right.
which is a real shame. Nowhere on there will you find Don't Fear the Reaper, which is also a shame because if you're a fan of that miniseries, you probably want that.
Yeah.
But I guess there are other venues that you can get that from.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, all these are great issues, and it's part of the appeal, I think, for people that are hardcore film music fans is to be able to get in there and sort of figure out, all right, this movie, is it all original score? Is it all songs? Is it a mix?
Right.
It can be fun to try and sort that stuff out.
Right. Who's the composer for Dreamcatcher? I don't remember, and I got to be honest, I don't remember any of the music from that movie. So, but I've only seen that movie once because I didn't really care for it. So,
yeah. Well, there's a reason you don't remember the music because it's not very memorable, unfortunately.
Okay.
The score was written by James Newton Howard.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of him?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He did.
Yeah, he's
Unbreakable, I believe. Was that him?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
He's one of the big voices in film music. He's
Yes.
had a long career. He's had a great career. He did most of M. Night Shyamalan's movies.
Yeah.
He did Fantastic Beasts. He did King Kong. What else? There's all kinds of stuff. Why none of it's coming to my brain right now, I don't know. Waterworld, Pretty Woman, Green Lantern, all 4 Hunger Games. So yeah, he's a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm no expert in his music. I do really love most of his stuff that I know. Unbreakable is great.
Yeah.
The Village is one of the best scores of that entire decade. Dreamcatcher is not. It isn't bad by any means. I actually really like The Village, but that's probably a whole different conversation. And I'm also a weirdo in that regard.
Yeah, I don't mind it either. But yeah, a lot of people just like the soundtrack and don't care for the movie, which is pretty rare, but it does happen.
It is rare, although there's an entire pocket of film score nerds who only listen to the music, couldn't care less about movies.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is strange, but hey, whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, Dreamcatcher, the score, it's okay. James Newton Howard is a talented guy, and a guy with as much talent as he has is going to make a good score. It's just there's nothing that stands out. There's nothing that you would necessarily walk out of the movie theater humming or anything like that. So to go back to that tally of 96 minutes that I gave you earlier, which is what the complete score runs, I think most people would probably only be interested in 7 or 8 of those minutes. And that's no knock on the score. It's just, it means that it's only really there to service the movie that it's in.
Right.
And, it does a decent job of that. It's not a great movie or a good movie or a watchable movie, but, that's not the score's fault. You can't pin that on James Newton Howard.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole movie. Well, the book is not one of King Stronger either once, but it feels like everybody's collecting a paycheck on that project. I don't know because there's a lot of high profile people attached to that movie beyond Morgan Freeman and who's the guy that plays House? I can't remember his name. He's in that movie as well. So it's just one of those projects that just didn't really gel.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the big misses in the whole Stephen King filmography, I would say, because really with all those people, there's no way that shouldn't have been good. But these things happen.
Yep. Yeah. Now the next one is interesting.
Yeah. Next up, it's Firestarter.
Yeah.
1 disc devoted to Firestarter.
Which is interesting.
Yeah. This is actually a little bit more interesting now than it might have been 5 years or so ago because of Stranger Things.
Right.
Which I don't know how many people know this, but the music for Stranger Things in some ways was not based directly on Firestarter, but the group that did the score for Firestarter, Tangerine Dream, is more based just on their body of work.
Okay. I thought it was John Carpenter too.
Yeah, that as well. It's that entire, sorry, my vocabulary is failing me, synthesizer
Right. Genre
of the 70s and 80s. Yeah. But Firestarter gets really interesting. There's a specific reason for that. The way most film scores work, this is my understanding at least, I'm not a professional in that regard, but the way most film scores work is once they've finished filming the movie and have a rough edit that everybody can sit down and watch, the director and the editor and the composer will sit down and have what they call a spotting session, which just means that they go through the movie and decide what scenes are going to have music and maybe what kind of music that it's going to have. So they'll say, all right, here's a scene of a guy stalking somebody. We're going to have suspenseful music. Not exactly something that would surprise most people, I think. That's how a film score gets made. In the case of Firestarter, according to the director of the movie, what happened was Tangerine Dream never saw the movie. They just wrote a bunch of music and sent it to the editor and said, well, do whatever you want to with it. Which is what the editor did. So,
which explains why this music doesn't fit the movie at all.
It really doesn't, and it's impossible for me to deny that, and yet I still kind of love it.
Yeah,
I don't know if that is a bad thing, but it's true.
Yeah, on its own, it's yeah. I mean, I like electronical musics, but it's good. It's it's easily listening. It's good stuff to listen to while you're doing work. But the main purpose of a soundtrack is to build up the action that's taking place in the movie, and this rarely does that. I mean, there's a couple of scenes I think when Charlie's wrestling with whether or not she's going to let the fire go. The music kind of works in those moments, but the rest of it, like the opening credits, I'm going like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, it kind of seems like when it works, it kind of seems like when it works accidentally.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the full soundtrack, right? It's on one CD. Kind of short.
To the best of my knowledge, it's the full soundtrack. I don't know if there was additional stuff that they wrote, but yeah, it is just a straight reissue of the original soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
And that CD had been out of print for a long time.
Right.
So there were probably a lot of Tangerine Dream fans who had never been able to get it that were really happy to have to spend $90 on a Stephen King box set to get a copy.
Yeah, and how much of of these tracks do you like? All of them, or are there what's the standouts on this one for you?
I would say that I probably do like almost all of them.
Okay.
I don't remember what a standout would be. I am totally failing you here, Lou. But
okay. I think people will probably be most familiar with the first one, Crystal Voice, which I guess could be a reference.
Yeah, Crystal Voice is great.
I guess that could be a reference to the drug that they're taking. But yeah, as soon as the movie starts and you're seeing this, I'm going like, is this like a Cheech and Chong movie or something? Or like, what the hell is this all about?
Cheech and Chong's Firestarter.
Yeah. Exactly.
Oh man, where is my Kindle so I can watch that?
So yeah, would you say this is the most listenable one out of the bunch? I know the Stand By Me soundtrack is pretty good, but
yeah, especially people that have gotten into that kind of music via Stranger Things,
right.
I think they would probably enjoy it. If you were growing up in the 80s and wondering why everybody had keyboards all of a sudden, maybe not. That might not be your cup of tea.
Right.
But yeah, of the discs on this collection, I would say it's the best.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Alrighty. So anything else about that one, or you want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's move on. The next thing that we've got is 3 discs worth of music from The Shining.
Wow.
And when I say The Shining, I mean the miniseries.
Oh, really? I just assumed it was the movie.
Well, you would.
Yeah.
You would, wouldn't you? No, it's the entire score for the TV miniseries, which was 3 parts. So each disc is the complete score for, part 1, part 2, part 3.
Oh.
And by my reckoning, there are probably about a dozen people in the entire world who want to listen to all of that music.
and you're one of them?
I am, regretfully. And that's not to say it's bad music. It isn't. The only time this had ever been put on CD before, it wasn't something that you could get from a store. It was a promotional disc that they sent out to Emmy voters to try and get it nominated for an Emmy.
Right.
I'm not going to say I stole a copy of that online, but somehow I have a copy. So,
And how does it match up to this one?
It matches up very well to this one because it's actually something that you might want to listen to. Whereas 2.5 hours worth of music from this, it's very repetitive. And once again, it does what it's supposed to do. It backs up the miniseries. That's really its job. Whoever wrote the music, in this case, Nicholas Pike is his name.
Okay.
He wasn't sitting there thinking, all right, 20 years from now, there's going to be 3 discs of this that some nerd in Alabama is going to be talking about on the internet. Let me make sure he enjoys it.
Yeah.
He was thinking, let me help this Mick Garris movie, which it did.
Yep.
So this is one of those things where I appreciate having it. I'll probably listen to it again at some point, but it's not really its own listening experience.
Right. Which is typical for a lot of soundtracks. It's very unusual.
To go back to John Williams, most of his are things that an average person might, if forced to listen to, enjoy. Even some of his, though, there can be times where you're like, do I really need to hear this? And the answer might be no.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, there's not really a whole lot to say about these 3 discs worth of The Shining.
Wow, that takes up a lot of space.
It really does.
And I just assumed it was the movie. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, the completist in me is thrilled for it to be there, but there aren't a lot of Stephen King film music completists, I think.
Right. That's a real small, finite subgenre of the whole Stephen King fandom.
Here, Han, I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Do you remember anything about the music from the miniseries, just based on the last time you watched it? Does anything stand out?
No, I can't say I do, actually.
There you go.
Nothing.
If a guy like you isn't going to remember anything about the music from that miniseries, then I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it did what it was supposed to do when I watched the movie, or miniseries. But as I mentioned, it's there, and you almost take it for granted, and it's like the special effects. When they do a great job, you usually doesn't notice their great work. So
yeah, that's a really good comparison.
Yeah,
it's almost subliminal.
Yes.
And there are a lot of composers that'll tell you that they feel like they didn't do their job right if you really notice the music.
Right.
I don't entirely agree with that, but I see where they're coming from.
Yeah, I hear you too, because I agree that it should never stand out and detract from the movie, but at the same time, like, again, coming back to John Williams' scores, it just gives that extra emotional hook that you don't get with a run-of-the-mill soundtrack. So yeah, it's like, special effects. If you're noticing the special effects, then they're not really doing their job. You should be everything should be in the movie to focus on the story.
Yeah,
and really, that it should be that way with every aspect of it. You shouldn't necessarily even notice that it's great acting while you're watching the movie.
Right. Yeah. So with the Shining movie, is there a complete soundtrack available for that?
There is not. You can't get that on CD in any way.
Wow.
It's never, at least to my knowledge, it's never been put on CD. There was a LP that came out at the time of the movie being released, and it doesn't necessarily have everything from the movie on it.
Sure.
And actually, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about The Shining a little bit more later. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just going to say one thing there. I think, and I'm not totally convinced, but I think I might have that LP.
Ooh.
Oh, nice.
How strange is that?
It's hard to find.
Wow.
Yeah, and the reason for that is many years ago I was even more collecting than I do now, and I wanted everything that had to do with Stephen King and even the soundtrack. So I actually bought quite a few CDs and a few LPs with the soundtrack. I don't think I ever listened to them. I just collected them. And I actually think they're laying somewhere in some box or something like that. So I think I'm going to look.
You got to dig them up, man.
Yeah, I'm going to
take
do
a picture
that.
of it, put it up on your site, or we'll put it on this podcast, because that's probably, and you should check it on eBay or something to see how much it's worth.
Last time I checked to try to find a copy of that LP, it was not obtainable by a guy on my budget. So
yeah,
so yeah, that's.
I think it has a yellow cover, right?
Mm-hmm. The one I've seen, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I might actually have that. I'm going to go and look for that right when we're done here.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing that that's never come out on CD. There's got to be a story there, but
yeah, must be some sort of rights issues or something. I don't know, but yeah. But to see that, the funny thing is, I do remember at least the opening theme from that movie when he's driving up for the first time to the hotel. That with the voices and that da da da, like it's very ominous music. So it definitely really gets you in the mood for what's to come.
Let's mentally bookmark that, because I've got more to say about that specific melody, I guess you would say.
Okay, cool.
I guess before we get to that, though, let's briefly talk about the last couple of discs in this soundtrack collection, both of which are devoted to The Stand.
Mm-hmm.
This is something I was really looking forward to, because I love the music in The Stand, not just the songs, but the score itself.
Right.
And I bought that CD when it came out 23 years ago, unbelievably.
Wow.
And listened to it pretty frequently since then. But, once again, that's one CD's worth of music for in this case, 4-part miniseries. So there's all kinds of music that wasn't on that soundtrack.
Right.
And the second disc of the soundtrack collection that covers The Stand is all new music relative to the previous CD. And unfortunately, it's okay,
right,
but it's not as great as I was hoping it would be. And
right.
I don't know if that means that the original soundtrack that came out just had all the good music, or if whoever curated this didn't do a great job of selecting new tracks to put on it, or
right,
or what the is. But it's okay. It's not what I was hoping for.
Right. Is the first disc mostly the acoustical guitar stuff with I think it's Ry Cooder that did it, right? And then the second disc is more just instrumental stuff, or
it's a bit of a mix with both.
Okay.
First disc definitely starts out with that theme, and it pops up here and there, but there's also pieces for piano. There's at least one straight symphonic piece, which actually kind of sticks out like a sore thumb compared to the rest of it. It's not bad. It's very different compared to everything else.
Right.
There's also that really weird music for the Trash Can Man that gets a pretty good amount of attention.
Mm. Okay, that track's not jumping out at me. I just remember mostly slide guitar, and I actually quite enjoy. Like I can hear it in my head right now, like the scenes when they're on the road or whatnot. That stuff really stands out. And of course, every time you see Flag, there's always that slide guitar stuff going on too. So
I can embarrass myself by trying to verbally replicate that. I'm not going to do it. But yeah, I think a lot of people that have seen The Stand are probably in the same boat with you on that.
Yeah.
And
right, Hans?
I would.
Yep. Yeah, I actually remember those guitars. So,
yeah, those riffs. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very memorable, and I personally think that music is probably a good part of the success of that miniseries.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I mean, of course, even though it's not on the CD, like you can't beat "Don't Fear the Reaper" to kick off an apocalyptic story. So
or a podcast.
Yeah.
So what are these books that's included on the picture? Is it thinner booklet and the booklet that looks quite thick?
Looks thick. Unfortunately, it isn't. It's got some liner notes. There's probably about 1 page per movie, just giving you a little bit of background on, how the score was made and stuff like that. It's good. Could have been a little bit better. One cool thing that's in there earlier when I was talking about that promotional CD version of The Shining that had come out, when that happened, Stephen King actually contributed a very short essay for the liner notes, just talking about,
Cool.
Well, I don't remember if it was mostly about the miniseries itself or if he talked about the music, but that's replicated in these liner notes. So if you were to spend $90 on this box set, you are getting a piece of Stephen King writing. So,
well,
That's
there's
kind of
more
cool.
expensive pieces of writing out there that you can buy.
Absolutely, there are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Is there a reason that these 4 movies that they have collected in this box? I mean, they to me they don't have much in common.
I would agree with that. Yeah. My guess is that they picked those specific titles because they thought that they would, well, this sounds like a simplistic thing to say, but they thought that that would make people want to buy the box set. And they were right about that. This is something I was actually going to bring up earlier, and I sidetracked myself and forgot to. There were a lot of Tangerine Dream fans that had never been able to get Firestarter. Well, there are also a huge number of James Newton Howard fans. Well, a huge number. There's probably a couple thousand of them in the entire world, but that's pretty huge among film music fans.
Yep.
That had always wanted the complete score of Dreamcatcher to come out. And it was actually kind of a big controversy on the places where you go to talk about this sort of thing. They were all very mad that that didn't come out just as its own thing that they could buy, which I totally understand because, there have been a couple of John Williams things that came out like that I had to shell out more money than I really wanted to pay.
Yeah.
So my guess is that they picked Dreamcatcher because they knew James Newton Howard fans would want to buy it. They picked Firestarter because it was out of print and Tangerine Dream fans would buy it. The other two, I don't really know. Maybe they had relationships with those composers.
Yeah. I'm wondering, I think these movies are all from Warner Brothers too, are they not? Or is it Dreamcatcher's Paramount? I can't remember.
Dreamcatcher is definitely Warner Brothers. Firestarter's Universal.
Oh, okay. So that shoots that theory down.
Yeah. but I mean, that doesn't mean that they don't have some sort of a holding in it, because there's all sorts of stuff like that you and I know nothing about.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the overall packaging like? Like I see them, they're all in those sleeve things, which I detest. Did you take them out of them and get jewel cases for the CDs or?
No, but I may yet do that.
Yeah.
I do have sort of protective sleeves that I put them in because I hate those things too.
Yeah.
To answer your question, what the packaging is like, the packaging is frustrating. It's cool in one sense because they make it sort of look like a Stephen King book.
Right. Oh, I see now. Because on the left, that's the actual book. On the right is the sleeve that the CD's go on. Because I think, Hans, you were probably thinking that was a book.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was a book. And I mean, if there was some liner notes in that, that's really false marketing. But I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's catered more to Stephen King fans than to soundtrack collectors, though, because that's the kind of thing that if you wanted to put it with your books, it would look in place. But if you want to put it with your collection of CDs, I mean, it doesn't fit. It's just this huge thing sitting there at the end of your CDs or wherever you put it, which is fine. Like, whatever. It is a cool idea, but I don't think it's all that practical personally.
Right.
It's interesting. So they have collected the movies based on the composer and directed to the soundtrack fans, and they have done the packing to attract the Stephen King fans. That's
trying to cover all their bases.
Yeah, and they end up kind of in the middle where no one is really happy.
Yeah, that's true.
Man, I wonder if they'll end up breaking up the set too.
My guess is once it sells out, which may or may not ever happen, that they probably will put out separate versions of at least Dreamcatcher, because that's something that would sell. The other stuff, I don't know. I'm not all that familiar with the business side of that sub-industry, but I know that part of the reason why the soundtracks come out that only contain some of the music is that there are all kinds of union fees for the musicians that are in the orchestra that record the music. And at a certain point, it just becomes cost prohibitive to put out a 200-minute score, which I think is what some of the Lord of the Rings scores cost. In the case of those movies, they were popular enough to eventually justify it. There were enough guys like you and me that would buy that to have it make sense. In the case of The Running Man or whatever,
one of the children
probably
of the
not.
Corn
I've got 2 soundtracks from the Children of the Corn series.
Whoa.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Which movie saw that? Which number of movies saw that?
The original and then the TV remake from a few years ago.
Okay. I just wondered which of the others, if they had, let's say, like picked number 5, why they would have picked just that one. So, but it makes sense.
I kid you not, I live in fear of somebody releasing a 12-disc box set of the entire Children of the Corn series soundtrack, because I would buy it. I would buy it. And it would be awful, but I would buy it.
We probably need to cut that out of the podcast, though, so we don't give anyone the idea to do it.
Yeah. So, Brian, I think you were
sure.
mentioning that you wanted to circle back to the Shining theme as well, title theme or something there that you wanted to talk about in regards to The Stand?
Well, in regards to The Shining, actually.
Oh, okay.
I guess we could segue into the next thing. I was going to, if you guys will, let me do it. Yeah, if you'll indulge me. I was just going to give you my picks for the top 10 scores from Stephen King movies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Sure.
I'll try to run through them relatively quickly so that I don't waste your entire
Start at 10
afternoon.
and work your way up. See, I told you he goes deep dives.
No. Let's start at honorable mention.
Okay.
And that's The Shining. And the reason why I'm putting it at honorable mention instead of within my top 10 is because the vast majority of it is not original music. It's stuff that Stanley Kubrick picked that already existed, classical music and avant-garde compositions and stuff like that. There is some original music in it, but primarily it's stuff that already existed. Now, he uses it in the same way that you would use an original score. It's just pre-existing music. And he did that in other movies as well. That was his approach in 2001, Clockwork Orange, most of his movies, really. But he was, and not everybody will agree with me on this, but in my opinion, he was a genius when it came to that sort of thing. Also, in general, but specifically when it came to finding really good pieces of music to, satisfy the psychological or emotional requirements of the scene that he was dealing with at the time. I don't know that there's anybody better. The thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to that piece of music that you mentioned earlier, the da 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 da, that is a Latin hymn called Dies Irae, which translates as the Day of Wrath. And if you listen for it, you will hear composers quoting the Dies Irae all the time. I mean, all the time. Not just in Stephen King movies, but in other movies as well. And this was something that I guess my ears had noticed it, but I didn't really know what I was hearing until a few years ago when I stumbled across somebody talking about it online, and it just blew my mind.
Interesting. I'll have to do a little Googling on that myself to see what all the fuss is about.
I'll give you a couple of very brief examples of it. You can hear it in another Stephen King place. If you listen to the music in the main titles of the original Salem's Lot miniseries.
Oh, okay.
It's very heavily featured there, but with another melody wrapped around it, so that it's sort of like two different musical ideas bouncing back and forth.
Right, Hans?
Yeah, I didn't notice that. I must admit to that.
It's subtle. That's why when I heard this, I was like, okay, cool. I love this. What else?
That is cool. You just earned your pay for the podcast, right? That is a cool fact.
That's okay. I'm stealing this from other people. A couple of other examples I wanted to give you because you'll think this is cool if you know the music or the scenes that I'm talking about. Right. In The Nightmare Before Christmas, the song Making Christmas, the melody of that is just Dies Irae.
Oh, okay.
Making Christmas.
That is cool.
And then my favorite time that John Williams uses it is in Home Alone. Every time that Macaulay Culkin runs into the scary old man, John Williams throws in a little bit of Dies Irae there. So, all right. Well, that's all I have to say on the subject of Dies Irae. If you're interested in that, just Google Dies Irae film music, and all sorts of stuff will pop up.
Right. Interesting. I will do that.
Okay, so I guess from there, give you my top 10.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll start with number 10, which I'm going to say is It, the new version of It. I thought about putting it a little higher, but I just haven't lived with it long enough.
Right.
But I thought it was a really great score. It was written by Benjamin Wallfish, who's kind of a new voice, but he had a big year in 2017. He not only did It, he also co-wrote Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, nice.
With Hans Zimmer.
Nice.
And he also did Annabelle Creation, and
yeah,
that's a pretty good year.
I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to watch that.
Did you guys make any note of the music when you were watching that? Was that anything that stood out in any way with It?
Yeah, I do think the soundtrack was effective, but that's a case where the music in the trailer, and there's a lot of sound effects, and I think that's like what Hans is talking about. Is like that when the slides are, doing like the picture book flips with It, you get that dun dun dun. Like I just thought that, and plus his laugh is mixed into it as well. So I think that trailer music kicks out. Mm-hmm. At this point, like you said, I haven't lived with the movie long enough. I think the trailer music was really good. The music from the movie, can't really say that anything's jumping out at me right now. No pun intended.
Well, I think that even though I don't remember the score so that I can quote it, but I think that when I saw the movie, I think that the music was a little bit too revealing from time to time. That when there was a scary scene coming, the music was almost too early, so you heard that something was going to happen. So it almost revealed that a scary scene was coming, and I think that I didn't really appreciate how that was done. I think that ruined a little bit of the scare for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see how that would be the case. Yeah,
but that is not. It's really not a comment about the score in itself. It's more like the use of the score.
Refresh my memory. I definitely listened to the episode where you guys reviewed it. You didn't find that movie to be scary at all, did you?
No, it was more of a thriller than a.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way. I loved it,
yeah,
but I just didn't find it to be scary.
Yeah,
that's okay though. I think that movie was a kids movie.
Yeah.
I think it was designed to scare kids.
Yeah. I think like we're getting off track here, but this, we're talking Stephen King, so I don't think people will mind. And I've talked to Hans about this, but I think that opening scene with Georgie, as soon as when he had grabbed him, and as soon as he opened his jaws and all those teeth came out, I just to me that just killed the tension of the scene. I would have much rather them shown him just trying to pull him into the sewer, and that eventually his arm just ripped off or something like that. Like if that's what they were going for, I would have rather seen that. So that's just a tangent that me and Hans have talked about a little bit, and which is weird because Hans is the gore guy and I'm not. But I just saw it as soon as his mouth opened up and all those teeth came out. I thought I've seen this in other movies. Like it just really killed it for me.
Yeah. My guess there, at the risk of continuing the tangent, my guess there is it just felt like that would be too much for people, and
I agree, but. Yeah. That's where it should have gone. I think actually the creepiest sequence for me was when Ben was in the library and over his shoulder and out of focus, that librarian was hovering behind him and you could see it was probably Pennywise.
I had never noticed that until the Blu-ray came out. And shortly before I got it, I saw somebody online someplace mention it.
Yeah.
And I watched that movie 3 times on an IMAX screen. So, but yeah, as soon as I got the Blu-ray, I threw it in and looked at that and just shuddered.
That is creepy.
It's very effective.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if there's other stuff in the movie like that just nobody's noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to number 9, which in this incredibly unscientific survey is Cujo.
Yeah.
Cujo was written by a guy named Charles Bernstein, who also wrote, in fact, his next movie after Cujo was A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Wow.
So there you go. Horror legend just on the basis of that.
Yeah. I've heard the name before, for sure.
You've probably also heard some of his music. Quentin Tarantino used some of his scores from the 1970s in both Kill Bill and Inglourious Bastards. He pulled a couple of tracks of Charles Bernstein music.
Oh, cool.
The music from Cujo is pretty good. It functions somewhat similarly to the music in Jaws.
I was just going to say
that. Yeah,
no, absolutely. I'm sure he got his inspiration from that.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
But he did a good job with it. It's very effective. I had not really paid that much attention to the music in that movie myself until I watched it again when that came out on Blu-ray a few years ago. And if you really focus on the way the music in that movie works, it does a really good job.
Sorry, another tangent for just a sec. Because
I love tangents. Throw them at me.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of these Blu-ray re-releases of these movies. Is it worth the upgrade? Because I've been waffling on it because I already have a lot of these movies on DVD, but I'm just wondering if you find the Blu-ray re-releases worthy. I know Cujo is a special example because that movie had a horrible initial release on DVD.
I personally think so, yes.
All right.
It's the kind of thing that not everybody is going to notice the differences, but once you do notice, it's kind of hard to go back to DVD.
Yeah.
Just speaking for me personally.
Right.
But, most DVDs look fine. So yeah. I would say in most cases for most people, you're probably good with DVD.
Right. Okay.
Number 8, Misery, which is similar to Cujo in that there's not really that much music that really stands out. You're not going to go to a college football game and have the marching band playing the theme from Misery.
No.
It's also similar to Cujo in that it just does a huge amount of work establishing the suspense of the movie. Right. You can't undervalue that. Yeah. Without what those guys are doing, I would argue that the movies probably don't work.
Mm-hmm. I do remember the clarinet 2-3 note, like bow wow, bow wow, something like that. I'm not very good at doing it, but there's that. It plays several times throughout the movie.
I know what you mean, though.
Yeah, I think it's clarinet, but you remember that, Hans?
Nope.
No.
I'm terrible at that. I have to admit it.
I don't know how I ended up talking about music on a podcast that people are actually going to hear because I know nothing about music. I know nothing about instruments. Arguably, I know nothing about nothing, but I definitely know nothing about music. And yet, I do think that was a clarinet.
Okay. So it's not just me.
No, not just you. No. Somewhere out there, there's a guy saying, it's a flugelhorn.
Yeah. It's an oboe. I don't know.
All right, so there's not a whole lot more for me to say about Misery. So I'll give you my number 7, which is The Dead Zone.
Yes, that's a good one.
It was written by Michael Kamen, who went on to have a really big career. He did stuff like Die Hard, Robin Hood, Mr. Holland's Opus, X-Men, Lethal Weapon. Fortunately, he passed away in 2003, but he had an awesome career.
Yeah.
The Dead Zone was one of his first scores. It's probably the one that put him on the map, would be my guess.
Yeah.
Once again, there's probably nothing that stands out most people, but it's a very effective music, starting with the opening credits.
Yes.
And the director basically just handed it over to him and said, all right, we're going to put opening credits at the top of this. That's going to open with your music. You set the tone for this movie.
Right. Yeah.
I think he did a really good job of that. I would say that the music throughout the movie just reflects the emotional state that Johnny is going through.
Yeah. I think I remember that music, not so much because of the music, but just because of the way the credits open with the letters slowly revealing and pulling apart from each other. So it's an effective sequence.
And the best way to appreciate something like that maybe is to think about what it would be like if music that didn't complement it was on screen.
Yeah.
If you've had
Tangerine Dream.
I was going to say Gangnam Style.
Oh,
imagine the opening with Gangnam Style. It just wouldn't work. Tangerine Dream. Actually, I can imagine them having done a decent score for the Dead Zone.
Yeah, and actually, their title credit sequence from that actually would work with the letters, I think.
Yeah, probably so. But yeah, I'm glad we got Michael Kamen instead. It's not, once again, something that you're going to hum, but very good if you enjoy that sort of thing. And similarly, I would say number 6 Dolores Claiborne by Danny Elfman is kind of in the same boat. Elfman stuff tends to be a little bit more hummable. And I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that even Hans knows who Danny Elfman is.
Well, I'm afraid I don't.
No? Well, take a shot in the dark with
Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's basically done all of Tim Burton's movies with just a couple of exceptions.
Okay.
That's what he's most noted for, but he's done all kinds of other stuff. He was, Scrooged, Men in Black. Recently he did Justice League. Yeah, he's a pretty big name as far as that sort of thing goes. As regards Dolores Claiborne, the music that he wrote for this, similar to how the music in the Dead Zone just reflected what was going on with Johnny, the music in Dolores Claiborne seems to reflect what's going on with Dolores the whole time. And I think it contributes a huge amount to the way you understand and perceive her character through the course of the movie. Does anything from that ring any bells with you?
No, unfortunately, I've only watched that movie once, which is embarrassing to say because it's actually a really good movie and I should rewatch it again sometime. So unfortunately, and it's been a while, so I don't really remember much about the score at all, or if anything.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just move on to number 5, which this is probably the only time this is going to appear in any kind of Stephen King top 5. I'm going to say Needful Things.
Oh, interesting.
This was written by a guy named Patrick Doyle, who at the time, he was probably best known as Kenneth Branagh's composer.
Okay.
So he had done Henry V. He had done Dead Again. I don't think he had done Hamlet yet. He might have done Much Ado About Nothing. But that's what he was known for. He's gone on to do stuff like he did one of the Harry Potter movies. He did the first Thor. But in Needful Things, this is another prime example for you to hear D.S. Ray. He uses that a couple of times to represent Leland Gaunt.
Okay.
And the score is sort of in the style of The Omen and other things like that are sort of choral-based music representing that, hey, this is what the devil sounds like.
Right.
Which is kind of its own subgenre of things. This specific score, he seems to have recognized or was pointed in the direction of doing this, that it needed to have a lighter touch. So, like, it's devil music, but it's kind of fun devil music.
Party time.
Yeah. And that sort of thing could very easily go wrong.
Yes.
But instead, I think it does a really good job for the movie of sort of subconsciously letting you know, hey, don't take this too seriously.
Yeah.
Which, if you're going to enjoy that movie, which is by no means a sure bet, but if you're going to enjoy it, then I think you probably have to enjoy it from that standpoint.
Yeah. This is an interesting one for me because I have to say that if there's a story of Stephen King's that leaves me cold, it's Needful Things. I just didn't connect with this one at all. And I know a lot of people talk about it's all about Reaganism and all this stuff, but it just doesn't do anything for me at all. I don't know how you guys feel about that book.
Well, I enjoy the book, I must say. The movie wasn't really all that good, but I think the book works.
I like it. It's not one of my favorites or anything, but you can be a Stephen King book and not be one of my favorites and still be awfully good. So that's where I would say that one lands for me.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Number 4, The Shawshank Redemption, which we've already talked about a little bit. I was specifically going to mention the 2 scenes that you talked about earlier.
Okay. Sorry to steal your thunder.
Because those are no, not at all. It actually helps prove my point. Those are standout scenes.
Yeah.
Among the best scenes, not just in any Stephen King movie, but probably just in movies generally.
Yeah.
And the music is a huge part of it.
Yes, for sure.
I think in the case of that movie, it would have still worked no matter if you had klezmer music behind it. But with the music that they got, just vaulted it into that next level.
Yes. And I also forgot to mention the music that plays at the end sequence when Red gets on the bus and then walks onto the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Also another lovely piece.
I love the music for when Brooks is let out of prison.
Yep.
It's just a devastating scene.
Yeah.
There's great music over the scene where the prisoners are getting to have their beers on the rooftop.
Yeah.
But really, the top to bottom, it's a great score.
Yeah.
It was written by Thomas Newman, who started out with stuff like Revenge of the Nerds and then worked his way up to where he is now.
Yeah.
He's been nominated for 14 Oscars, so he's He's no slouch.
Yeah. And this is just a soundtrack that I know because I've watched this movie so often, at least once a year. So it's just imprinted in my DNA at this point.
Nothing wrong with that.
No.
If you're going to have music imprinted in your DNA, that's good music to go with.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll give you number 3. I'm going to say Creepshow.
Oh, interesting.
Creepshow's an interesting case. It started out, George Romero had a plan for what he was going to do with this music. He was going to do the same thing with it that he did with the music for Night of the Living Dead, which was, I don't know if this sort of thing still exists, but back in the day, there used to be a service that you could go to that provided stock music. Library music is what they call it. This was music that just composers for hire would go write music intended to convey suspense or romance or what have you. And you would just go to this bank of library music and say, all right, well, I need suspenseful music, so let me pick suspenseful music number 76 and just throw it on top of the images. Romero apparently was a master at taking that stuff and finding bits that he liked and editing it together so as to sort of create its own musical landscape. And he intended to do the same thing with Creepshow, but I guess it wasn't working as well as he hoped. And the guy that was his first assistant director on the movie just happened to be a musician and said, hey, I can make this work by just composing some original stuff. So he did. And so the movie itself is a mix of library music and original music. If you find a copy of the Creepshow score on CD, there is almost nothing better to listen to around Halloween. The only thing that's better is Halloween itself.
Right.
Halloween, and then it's Creepshow.
Yeah.
Every year I probably play it a dozen times.
Right.
Never gets old.
When you say Halloween, you mean the movie, right?
Yes.
Yes.
But there's some cool stuff in this score. For example, in the segment, the title of which I'm blanking on at the moment, the one that Leslie Nielsen and Ted Danson are in.
Right.
Leslie Nielsen's character, as he's going about his day, is humming Camptown Ladies. Mm-hmm. And so John Harrison, the guy that composed the score, he took the melody for Camptown Ladies and laced it into the score in this really ominous setting. So if you listen to the score for that segment, a great deal of it is just Camptown Ladies, but made to sound scary.
That's cool.
Which is pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Did the assistant director, did he go on to compose other stuff, or was this just a one-shot thing for him? I
think he did some other stuff. I want to say he did at least the theme music for the Tales from the Dark Side TV series, but I think he may have done a bunch of the episodes as well.
Right.
He himself went on to become a director. He directed the Sci-Fi Channel version of Dune.
Oh, nice. That's a nice version too. Very good.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into number 2, which is the original version of Carrie. Carrie is interesting because, Lou, I bet you know who Bernard Herrmann is.
Yes. He directed wrote a lot of scores for the 50s movies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Including Psycho.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that he's probably best known for. Well, Brian De Palma, the director of Carrie, had begun working with Bernard Herrmann toward the end of Herrmann's life, and Herrmann was going to score Carrie, but he passed away before he had an opportunity to. So that's, for me, as a film music fan, that's one of the great misses in all of King's filmography, is the idea that you could have had a Bernard Herrmann score for Stephen King's first movie.
Right.
Once again, I need that Kindle to go find that and listen to it.
Yeah. Well, that explains the violence strike in Carrie now, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, which is something that a lot of people complain about with that score, and I feel where they're coming from on that.
Oh, it totally works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it just really gives that extra oomph to when she's using her powers.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. For a long time, it bothered me, but just in the past few years, I've really come around on Carrie. I used to not be that big a fan of that movie.
Oh, okay.
I've sort of changed my mind.
Yeah, especially after the remake.
There's also, I kind of liked the remake, but then again, I also kind of like the Rage Carrie too. So I'm probably not the.
Yeah, I like the
best
Rage Carrie
guy.
too as well. Actually, I thought it was.
Do you?
It was okay. It was decent. It wasn't as bad as the TV miniseries, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you on that. Um, with the score for Carrie, it ended up being written by an Italian guy named Pino Donaggio, who I'm sure he's done all sorts of things that Italian film fans would know. I don't, unfortunately. He did a lot of work later on with Brian De Palma, but he's got some great stuff in this score. There's some really cheesy stuff too. He has some cheesy synthesizer music during the scenes that play almost like teenage comedies. But even that kind of works because it's if you put yourself in the mind space of somebody that was watching the movie in 1976, you may not have known what you were watching. So in those scenes, you might have just thought you were watching a comedy. So I think it plays pretty well from that standpoint.
Yeah, I especially like the music during the prom sequences. Once Carrie lets loose, I think it just really underscores the whole mayhem and carnage of what's going on.
Yeah, and even leading up to that, like the slow motion stuff where it's Carrie and Tommy walking up to the stage.
Yeah.
What you're hearing there is mostly his theme music for Carrie herself, but at the same time that's going on, you're also seeing those shots of Sue looking up into the rafters and seeing that there's a bucket there.
Yeah.
And he has music that represents that as well. And he ties both things together seamlessly. I mean, that's a wonderful scene from every standpoint, but the music is a huge part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the music when Carrie's mother, spoiler alert, gets killed, that's terrific too. And really just throughout the movie, it's really good.
Interesting. Yes, it is. All right, that brings us to
number one.
And we have to guess this before you tell it to us.
Oh, no, that's a good idea.
I'm trying to think.
No, I'm gonna guess on what I would probably pick as my number one if I were told to pick the number one soundtrack to a Stephen King movie. You probably don't have the same, but I'm gonna guess on it anyway. So I'm saying Maximum Overdrive.
Interesting choice. It's all original stuff by AC/DC. Yeah.
I know, but
yeah, I do love that score though.
I don't know this stuff, so I'm gonna guess anyway.
That's a pretty good guess. But the problem is that to me is not soundtrack. That's rock and roll music. That's not like orchestral music.
Yeah.
But I might be wrong. Maybe Brian's gone that direction. I'm still trying to think. Like we've talked about so many movies, I'm probably missing something, or maybe he's already mentioned it, and he's just going to reinforce that. But
I don't think I've mentioned it. I've mentioned the person who wrote the music, but not the movie.
Okay.
The Mangler.
The what?
The Mangler.
Oh,
the Mangler. Oh, no.
Oh, jeez. Okay, nothing's coming to mind. I would have thought maybe The Shining or something like that. But
if I had included The Shining would have been my number one by far. If I included it on the list, but no, it's Christine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, John Carpenter. Yep, I can see that.
But to touch on Maximum Overdrive real quick, I do love that score.
Yes.
It's hard.
How can you
it's
not?
It's kind of hard to tell how much of it there is.
Yeah.
And that stuff, apart from the soundtrack that came out, has mostly AC/DC songs. There are two instrumental pieces on there, both of which are awesome. But I really hope someday they'll put out something that has everything they did for the movie. Because a lot of it is stuff that I don't know if it's original score or if it's stuff that they pulled from AC/DC songs that maybe I'm just not familiar with.
Yeah, I think AC/DC, everything they wrote for that was original. I might be mistaken on that, but
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Hans, do you have the LP of that movie?
I think I actually have the CD.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go.
All right. So Christine, probably in all reality, I should have it further down the list, but I can't help putting it at number one because I love John Carpenter's music. And the older it all gets, the better it all seems, quite frankly, which isn't always the case with any music, but much less synthesizer-based music, which is what he really does. But Christine itself is an interesting case because probably what most people think about when they think about that movie is the songs
Bad
that
to
he
the Bone.
uses.
Yeah.
The 50s. Yeah. And Bad to the Bone. Absolutely. Which is the song that plays in my head most of the day.
Okay.
But yeah, the score itself is great too. He mostly brings it in during scenes that represent Arnie's obsession with the car and the scenes that he uses when Christine attacks. And all of that stuff is just fantastic.
Yeah.
The only way to listen to this music is to get in your car, preferably about 4 a.m. whenever the town that you live in is deserted and there's nobody on the streets. Crank it up all the way, roll your windows down, and just drive around and pretend you're in Christine. I kid you not. I've done this. It's awesome.
Your neighbors must love you.
It's debatable. No, I would never play it at full volume in my apartment. Actually, most of the music that I listen to is while I'm driving at this point, strangely enough. But Christine works especially well that way.
Well, a lot of music sounds good in cars. So
it really does.
Different acoustical situation.
I have to say though, it can be a little embarrassing if you're listening to the soundtrack to Dreamcatcher. And you're at a stoplight and somebody pulls up beside you. You know they're judging you. And they're not wrong to do it.
No. Oh, well. You're secure in your own identity, so. Especially if Bad to the Bone is what you're playing in your head all the time.
I might have exaggerated that a bit. But yeah, with Bad to the Bone, that's another one. I don't know that you can get away in 2018 with driving around playing Bad to the Bone. I think you're in violation of some sort of standards and practices if you do that.
Maybe, yeah. Times have changed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's my top 10, guys. There's probably a lot of stuff there to disagree with, but that's okay. That's always the case with lists of
I'm thinking
nature
too, and again, my mind might be colored by the title track, obviously, but the TV series Golden Years, I don't remember if that music was. I think that music was pretty interesting as well at times, but maybe I'm misremembering it.
The what I remember from that is obviously the David Bowie song. They used that in the opening credits, and then in the end credits there was sort of an instrumental version of it.
Yeah.
Which is really good too. The music in the series itself doesn't come to mind for me immediately.
Might be colored by that Bowie stuff.
Well, no, that probably means that it's pretty good, because if it was bad, it would stand out.
Yeah.
You want an example of that? I would point you in the direction of the Mangler that Hans mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Not good.
No,
not good
on any aspect, except for what's the guy who plays Freddy Krueger?
Robert Englund.
Robert Englund.
Yeah, he's so over the top that it's just kind of fun to watch him.
Yeah.
Strangely, that has not come out on Blu-ray yet.
Yeah, I wonder why.
I don't know. God help me, I'll buy it when it
does. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other 3 movies are out on DVD, so you can go and get those.
Yeah, I'm looking at them right now. I can see them on my shelf.
Well, Bryant, this has been a lot of fun. I want to thank you for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you guys for indulging me.
Not a problem. Maybe we'll have you on down the road sometime if there's something that comes up that you're really passionate about that you would like to talk about.
I'm open to anything. I remember you guys talking about doing an entire Children of the Corn watch through.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that one.
I might need your moral support on that one.
Just saying, I'm available if that were to be a thing that anybody wants.
All right. We'll keep that in mind.
Yeah.
The more the merrier. Okay. Is anything else that you wanted to mention about this topic, or have you exhausted your well of knowledge?
I think I have exhausted my well of knowledge. That typically doesn't take long, but I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, I agree. It was a blast. And this is not a topic that we ever have talked about before. So I think it's a nice change of pace. And Hans, do you feel more educated now?
Definitely. I don't think I will look at the movie in the same way again that I have. I think I will pay more attention to the soundtrack. I don't think I'll be sitting in my car listening to the soundtrack to Christine in the near future, but I will definitely notice the music more when I watch the movies.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thanks again, Bryant. All the best to you, and
Same to you
we'll
guys.
see you on the interwebs.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there you go, folks. That's another podcast in the can, and I hope you all enjoyed our conversation with Bryant Burnette about music and Stephen King adaptations. Maybe you're like Hans and you don't pay any attention to it. Maybe you're a little more like me and Bryant. Do definitely notice such things in movies and TV series. So, and we have never done this before, so I think it was a lot of fun, and I think you found it a little educational too, right, Hans?
Definitely. I will never look at the movie in the same way as I did before. But it's interesting. I mean, it's like with special effects. If they do their job, you don't notice it.
Right.
So it's a ungrateful job, but we are very happy that someone is doing it.
Yes. And if nothing else, we jogged Hans's memory that he's got boxes full of all these soundtracks that he's never listened to.
I do.
Okay, so that's this episode. Next episode, we're going to be reviewing the play that was released last year in The Plowman, and it's called Thin Scenery. And
Yes.
of course, there will be the latest news, and we might have some other items that we'll discuss as well. But until next time, stay safe,
But
stay scared.
yeah,
Boom.
you nail it.
The end. Boo.